Yeah, hey Manny. Not exactly sure where you are in fall camp, but it's probably, I imagine, wrapping up either today or tomorrow. Can you tell us where you are and what you liked in the scrimmage on Saturday, or was it Saturday or Friday night?
Yeah, sure, Connor. We went Friday night scrimmage. That pretty much ended our training camp. We took Saturday off, did a photo day. Sunday we had sort of our situational practice. You go over onside kick, Hail Mary, just all those kind of things that you don't need them until you need them. More of your obscure situations. And then today was our preparation for game week. So we're completely dialed in on Elon. Um, you know, really, first time starting to work on schemes other than just going offense versus defense. So I think that was a welcome change. I think we're ready to set our attention on somebody else. And we'll have a chance to run through our game plan this week and then come back on the short week next week and refine it. Because we're not very far off from game day. And I think that excites everybody in our program.
What did you see from 3 weeks of fall camp? What did you like? What did you come away from being encouraged with?
I mean, first and foremost is that we've not sustained any major injuries, which that's always um, the first goal of training camp is, get your team to the games. But we've maintained a physical edge. I think the guys have practiced, really hard. I can't remember us having a bad day. Whereas coaches, we had to get after them or, really were displeased with the energy that I don't really, I'm proud of the way that they brought it every day. Um, they've been intentional in terms of the way that they've worked. And I think that's been the MO they took from the summer into training camp. The competition has been good between both sides of the ball. It's not like there's just somebody dominating it at all times. And so I think the kids have taken confidence of the fact that they know that they'll work hard. They know that they're built to last over 60 minutes. Now it's just the refinement of execution, right? That just happens. I mean, that's a never-ending battle even throughout the season. But knowing, what the gravity of our games in September, there is an urgency that we've got to get ourselves going and be ready in quote unquote mid-season form from the open kickoff.
Chip, go ahead.
Yeah, Manny, you mentioned September. Looking at the schedule, do you think with games against, after Elon against Illinois and Tulane and then NC State by mid-September, you'll have a good handle on this team, or it'll be more of a work in progress kind of season?
Well, and in our program, there's no after Elon. I mean, it was 3-0 Elon, and they had the ball inside our 30-yard line with 3 minutes left in the first half last year. So we've got a lot of respect for everybody on our schedule. Chip, I don't really believe that you don't really know your team until the end of September anyway, regardless of who you bring back, how experienced you are. There's just a coming together of pieces, and I think that's always been true. I think now, if you look at college football with all the roster turnover every year, I think that'll be even more true now. Because you just got to get into those games to really find out how all the pieces fit together. Um, it doesn't mean you're a finished product on October 1st. I think we took pride in getting better, but I thought we were a better team in November last year than we were in September. Um, but that being said, it normally takes about 4 or 5 weeks to really get a sense of what you do best and things that you have to work on.
Anna, go ahead.
Hey coach, I just wanted to ask through, fall camp, where did you see the most growth and improvement in your team? And then what are some areas that you're still looking for some growth and some progress to be made?
And I'll answer the second part first. I think where we're still looking for growth, and this is probably again a familiar refrain across the country, is developing our depth. Um, we signed a big recruiting class a year ago. We're really excited about those guys that we signed. But we can get young at a hurry at some positions, whether that's in the secondary, whether it's in the offensive line. You're never going to make it through a season, just with your first 22. It's usually the second 22 that separates the teams at the top of college football. So I think that's the point. I think we're trying to get to a level here in this program where we've got a two deep that can compete with each other and not have a drop off. I think there are some positions where we're pretty darn close to that. If have not already achieved that, I like our depth on our front seven. Defense, I do like our depth at wide receiver and running back and tight end. on offense. But we're just not there yet at all the spots. So I think that's the one part and what we're continuing to hammer away at. And the part that we're pleased about is what I mentioned before. I just think the guys have brought, everybody can say that they're about wanting to, accomplish great things, but normally that passion, that steam sometimes burns out, during the tough days of training camp. And again, I'm just proud that our guys they brought it every day. And that allows us as coaches to coach the football. We get to coach the execution because we're not trying to beg them to love football. We're not trying to beg them to come out and work hard and perform. They're kind of engineered that way already.
Mark Watson, did you still have a question? All right, Jim Sumner, go ahead.
Oh yeah, hey Manny, good morning. Anna took my A question, so I'm going to go with my B question. There's a narrative in portions of the national media that Duke was lucky last year to win so many 50-50 games, and you'll regress to the mean this year and be a 500 team. How do you respond to that?
Well, well, first of all, we don't respond to narratives because we don't care about narratives. But we're well aware of our score in our record in one score games. I don't think that that's a random lottery. Um, but the first key to improving off of last year is to not find yourself in as many one score games,
Mhm.
right? So it's not like the same season plays out again, and then all of a sudden the coin flip at the end of the game decides whether you won or lost. Um, if we improve as a football team, which we think we are an improved football team from what we were a year ago, we'll play better. And if we play better, we may not end up in as many one score games, or maybe we'll end up in one score games against, better competition or who knows what. But look, I will say this, college football is going to be dictated by who wins and loses in one score games because very similar to the National Football League, you're going to see more and more parity. And the distribution of talent is much more widespread throughout the country. I don't think anybody can argue that. We're just in a different era than we were even 5 years ago. So, get the popcorn ready. We're going to be in some fourth quarter games, and that's why we work like crazy on those situations. Um, I mean, a perfect example of what we practiced last Sunday. We had a church situation against UConn, right, where Star Thomas breaks free, and if Star scores, guess what? UConn's not a one-score game, but because we had practiced it, Star goes down inside the 5 yard line. We take a knee and win the game. Now, was that a blessing by the one score fairy, or was that a blessing by you know what I mean, like the situational excellence fairy? You see what I'm saying? Like, so to me, we're just trying to collect wins. We'll win by 12 times if that's available. I'd rather win by 12 times, win by 12 one time, right? So it is what it is.
How does the church feel play into your ability to win the fourth quarter?
Well, I think that's certainly part of it as well. I mean, I think our guys believe in their conditioning. They see it. It's part of how we're designed schematically with the tempo that we play on offense, and that's why I mentioned that's why our depth is so important that we can continue to try to roll people in through the course of the game to keep our bodies fresh, our best players fresh in the fourth quarter. And I think that's where I talk about on our front seven on defense, just historically with what we've done through the years, and you saw it in year one last year at Duke, is that we can roll 8 to 10 guys on the defensive line and roll 6 guys at that linebacker level. We're going to play really, really fast and really, really hard the entire game because no one has to pace themselves, and that's why it looks the way that it looks when it's done right, and that'll be the expectation again this year.
Thanks.
Pat, go ahead.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Manny. And just want to say I love that line you just dropped, Manny. Situational excellence fairy. That was awesome. Yeah, my question. You guys, I think your team last year and even the team prior had a big chip on their shoulders. Um, how do you kind of maintain that kind of edge when you're probably not going to surprise anybody this year?
Yeah, I think it's still just for me observing our guys. I think it's still baked into who they are in the locker room. Um, I just the chip is so like ingrained in who Duke football is. I just there are so many ways that I see them reference it. So I don't think anybody has already booked downtown for the parade, or, I haven't seen any statues getting built already. So I think our guys are aware that we still have a lot to prove, and I'd imagine that chip is still pretty strong on their shoulder.
Jesse, go ahead.
Hey, Coach. Thanks for the time on Monday. I know you mentioned last week the scrimmage over this past weekend, was going to set the roles for at least the season opener, maybe even beyond into September. Do you feel like you have a good grasp on, who's good at what, and maybe who some of your starters are going to be at some question or at some positions maybe you had some questions at?
I think most positions, we're getting close to that point. We'll release a depth chart for the first time on Monday, at our press conference next Monday. We play a Friday night as sort of our dress rehearsal, sort of mock game. It's not a hitting event, but you go through, put both teams on the same sideline, sort of play against Elon. And so that's really where you try to get your substitution patterns set the way that you would for game day. So we're still a couple days away from that. Part of that is still dictated by a couple guys, healing from some camp bumps and bruises that won't limit them from performing against Elon, but it still has them on a limited basis this week in practice. So, that's sort of, those are when you get to 7 days out, now you really start to dial in, snap counts and things like that.
Adam, go ahead.
I was just talking about the depth chart a little bit. I know you're going to wait until Monday to release it, but are there any youngsters that pushed their way up to the top of the depth chart during fall camp, or any of the incoming transfers that were not mid-year enrollees, maybe in the wide receivers room? I'm assuming that really kind of showed you guys enough to get into that too deep.
I mean, I think I want to make sure I say this correctly. I mean, I think all the transfers, I'll start with them. I think all the transfers will have prominent roles. I mean, on offense, you mentioned the wideouts, Barcade, Anthony. You'll see them a bunch on Friday. Landon King at tight end, Jordan Lawson at left guard, Anderson Castle at running back. I always hate to go name by name because I'm afraid I might miss somebody defensively. We talked about Weaver, Francois, Josiah Green. Yeah, I mean, I think we feel like we've hit on the entire transfer class, which is really encouraging, and says a lot about our personnel department and the job they did, and our coaching staff from an evaluation standpoint. Obviously, I mentioned the quarterback. In terms of the freshmen, same thing. You hate to get into naming names because this is not final. But I would imagine you'll see, I mentioned at safety, Mekhi Jones, Andrew Pellicciata. I would imagine that they'll have some role as the season goes on. William Felder at star. Imagine you'll see him at the point. Gompers at tight end. Bryce Davis at defensive end. Offensively, they're Nate Shepard, was here during training camp. You'll see him. So, like I said, we may be missing people, but we really feel like we've upgraded our football team with the transfers we brought in, and the recruiting class worthy of the accolades that they received when they signed with us.
Just one quick follow-up there. You said Gompers at tight end. Was that correct, or was that a
No, at linebacker. If
miss?
I think I said Gompers. Maybe I said defensive end Bryce Davis. No, he's
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Mark Watson, did you get your audio issue figured out? All right, Connor, go ahead.
Manny, is there any update you can give us on Terry Moore and whether he's been able to do anything more than he was doing maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago?
I'm sure he's doing more, but same thing right now. He's still out, and we see him doing more stuff with the trainers and working aside, but he hasn't trained with the team yet. In terms of in football settings. So it's got to be the same deal. We'll figure that out as the year progresses.
To kind of ask a related follow-up, how encouraged have you been about Mekhi and Andrew Pellicciata stepping up as freshmen, especially Pellicciata not being there over the spring?
Yeah, that's very as I rack my brain over the course of my career, that's very unusual at that position, because that's a hard position to just mistakes are a big problem at safety. but those guys are old souls, very mature. You can see them really trying to do things exactly the way that Coach Lister coaches them to do it, and they have just had a consistency of performance over the course of training camp that warrants a role on the team. And I think hopefully where all this factors in, where our football team talk about improving from a year ago, is in special teams. I would expect our coverage teams, our return teams, to really benefit from the fact that we do have increased depth across the board of our football roster, and guys really competing to get on the field in any type of role, because we do have, talented players at the top of our roster. And so guys have to find a way to contribute towards winning.
And Chip, last question to you, sir.
Yeah, Manny, you mentioned chip on your shoulder kind of attitude from your team, and Darian Mensah has mentioned that a number of times about his play. As a coach, can you sense that in him, and do you like players like that to bring that kind of edge uh, when you recruit or pick up a player from the portal?
Of course, yeah. And it's you never really know, and you never know, will guys change and become complacent with success. Um, but again, I just think that's something that David Feely does a great job of, David Feely coaches the team more than anybody else on the staff, because he's got him for basically 8 months, and that guy coaches with a chip on his shoulder every day. And I think that's a big part of why our guys play and respond the way that they do. And so whether that's with a guy like Darian, when you add him in, and I think that's part of the connection with the locker room, because they see the similarity of, kind of the underdog story, under recruited, undervalued, and able to sort of punch above your weight based off of what somebody's, once said about you. So it's been a good mix, been a good fit for our team and our culture here.
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you in person here next week and tomorrow on Zoom with